Thank you, Roberto. This morning's reading comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 13, verses 10 through 17. Now Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, and not on the Sabbath day." But the Lord answered him and said, "You hypocrites! Does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 long years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that he was doing. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Well, good morning again. It's good to be here with you all this morning. Well, pretty easy, passage today from the gospel. I mean, it barely requires a sermon, but since I'm here, we might as well, right? Well, as a parent, as a pastor, as a voting participant in society, I know there's two sides to every story. This is certainly the case in today's gospel reading. I can sympathize with both after reading this interaction that they have with Jesus. So how about we start with the one that might be a little harder to sympathize with? I know, it's challenging to have sympathy for the temple leader. There is something compelling when we lead with sympathy, though. I think his intentions are good, although misguided. Most of me just wants him to be rejoicing for the healing of this woman. Instead, he has a bitter response to Jesus doing the work on the Sabbath day. And you're not supposed to do work on the Sabbath day. Sabbath day is for rest and for renewal. And while it may not we might not like the restrictions in our modern and more open-minded society, I assure you, the Israelites took this rule very seriously. They received this law, by the way, while they were in Exodus, away from Egypt, running for their lives. They were working as slaves for many years before, and they worked when they were told to work, meaning they never got a day off. So this commandment of rest goes deep. This commandment actually to set aside one day of the week to rest their bodies and their livestock and retreat for a time of renewal and prayer. Trust me, they heard this only as good news. This commandment later becomes a way in which the Israelites keep their identity, a place that ties them to the sacred and right relationship with God. So yes, they loved laws. And you know what? We love laws too. Little constitutional trivia for you real quick. You know how many times the Colorado Constitution has been amended? 176 times since 1876. But that's nothing compared to the good old state of Texas. When I was in college, I remember it was 300, but a little bit of research. Texas is up to 530 times since 1876. But you know who the real winner is? You know who loves the law the most? Marion's going to love this. The good old state of Alabama. Since 1901, they have amended their Constitution 977 times. They really love laws in Alabama. Law certainly helps order our world. And you know what the glue is that holds it all together? It's grace. I can't help to wonder if the world would be a better place if we really were more serious about taking Sabbath. I mean, it's the best perk of working at the chapel. I get 6 days of Sabbath. I only work 1 day a week. I mean, kids, become a pastor. It's great. In all serious, I know we aren't slaves. Not in the way the Israelites were, and the way some people still are. And let's be honest, clearly, slavery still exists throughout the world just because we can't see it. It doesn't mean it's not there. But I know for us, I know plenty of you, you work really hard, and you work very long hours. And sometimes you have to even have an extra job to make ends meet. And I know for a fact that many of us have a harder time even disconnecting from work. It lives in our pocket. There's text messages, there's emails, there's dinging, reminding us, constantly demanding our attention. The effects this all has on all different levels of people from different economic ladders. It's hectic, it's demanding. So God was right. Rest is good. God's creation benefits from slowing down. And so, prescribing rest, I get it. We should protect it. Which is why I can find some sympathy for this leader in the synagogue. Because he knows, and everyone knows, once you start making exceptions for this reason, well, soon no one is really going to keep the Sabbath anymore, and the whole point might get lost. And that's not just for the Sabbath, that's the whole law. Making exceptions, and it's not really a law anymore. It's like a suggestion. It has little or no power to protect or to preserve. It's like a nice idea. You should really think about it. In all fairness, we regularly agree with this leader. Perhaps not about the Sabbath, but we all have our laws that we subscribe to. Maybe it's little things like only eating organic foods, or children's bedtimes, or refusing to take calls on your day off, or not eating, drinking, or buying anything pumpkin spiced until after Halloween. These are all important rules to different people, actual rules. And of course, there are the much larger ones as well, like traditional gender roles, human sexuality, maybe it's immigration, maybe it's tax law. Whatever it is, there are some laws that feel you should just keep, period. And if you don't, who knows what will unravel? So I sympathize with this well-intended, possibly misguided, law-abiding leader of the synagogue. And guess what? His isn't the only perspective. So now let us turn our attention to this person we can universally sympathize with, who has only seen half of the world she lives in for many years due to the illness that she has. It keeps her so hunched over, she can't even look you in the eye unless you get on the ground to talk to her. I picture her as faithful, law-abiding, who comes to the synagogue regularly. Despite feeling awful, I can only imagine the pain that comes from this ailment. And there she is, keeping the Sabbath, despite her condition, worshiping God with her community. For all we know, she harbored concerns about the healing she received. She's like, "Oh, Jesus, please, any other day of the week." But not really. Come on. Whatever principles or resolutions she may have entered the synagogue with that day took a backseat to the sense of overwhelming relief and gratitude when Jesus approached her and healed her. when he called her a daughter of Abraham and restored her to full health. I mean, can you even begin to imagine what it feels like to have your full diaphragm freed, to take a deep breath for the first time? To the relief that she must have felt in her hamstrings, not working against gravity constantly. The tears must have rolled from her eyes and from the people all around her. This miraculous moment, something that defies space and time. Where did all those laws and rules and worries and judgments go? Did they just simply disappear? Perhaps they were temporarily suspended in those first moments of joy and gratitude. And this is how it goes with laws. The laws matter most simply because at its best, it keeps peace and order. And at its worst, it works as a mechanism to hold on to power for the sake of power and not the common good. The true essence of a law holds space with boundaries, or a set of boundaries so that society can flourish in a unified ethic that holds integrity for the common man, woman, and child. The law matters because it encourages us, sometimes even drives us to look beyond ourselves so that we might love and care for our neighbor instead of finding ways to sue each other. And as important as we might think laws are, and take notice, Jesus doesn't set aside the law, but rather offers a different interpretation today. That it must bow to mercy, to life, to freedom. Laws help us live our lives better, but grace creates life. Law helps order our world, but grace is what holds the world together. Law pushes us to care for each other, but grace restores us to each other when we failed the law and when we failed each other. Jesus came preaching the kingdom of God, and while the law helps make sense and get more out of the kingdom of the world, it must bend to grace. That constitutes abundant life that Jesus proclaims. For above and beyond all the laws ever received or conceived, the absolute law is love. Love God and love your neighbor. Or perhaps, love God by loving your neighbor. And so, of course, Jesus heals on the Sabbath day and performs a miracle. We know there was rejoicing by this healed woman. We can imagine the rejoicing of the people present, and this is what miracles do. Grace abounds. Compassion wins. Healing happens. Mercy steps in through grace that doesn't make us hate the law. Miracles are those glimpses of God, those glimpses that remind us that God is bigger than the laws we construct, leaving us with a deep sense of gratitude for God, family, and neighbor. So, yes, I sympathize with these two characters in the gospel today. To look at all the ways miracles emerge, from law, from healing, and even those times when things don't go the way we would like them to go. I can sympathize deeply with these characters. Now, it's strange to think of all the places miracles can actually occur. We throw that word around pretty loosely. A close parking spot at the city market, it's a miracle. A close call on a hiking and biking trip where it makes you stop and your heart is racing, and you say to yourself, it's a miracle I only fell halfway down and not all the way to the bottom. And then, of course, those events that defy the laws of nature, that can only be explained by divine intervention. It's a miracle my back works correctly again and I can stand up and see the world from a new perspective. I wonder if we could have, maybe we do have like a half view of miracles, just as this woman had a literal half view of the world in today's gospel. Can miracles occur even from the law? Upon a half view on today's reading, the miracle occurs from Jesus breaking the law. But let's think about this for a moment. If miracles are divine interventions that we can't explain from the human experience, I think we can call Sabbath law a miracle in itself. How miraculous is it that we subscribe to a God that decided in all of the chaos and all the work that needs to be done to make the world right again, we should devote a full day to rest from our work and our busy lives. And why is that? And what's the point? It's not that far removed from the point Jesus is making by healing this woman. So it could bring us to a state of gratitude for the life we get to live. Could it be the difference in pondering what constitutes a miracle over what a miracle actually achieves, which is ultimately a state of deep and holy gratitude for the life we get to live in this world? I do believe miracles occur in a myriad of places. Of course, the places where divine healing happens, maybe even laws. But what about those people that don't receive the healing they want? Do miracles exist in those hard places too? It's a very hard question and tricky question to answer. But there are times in our lives where God can seem absent and void. There are times when we might feel this is all just too much. There are times when it just seems downright unfair. I think with active reflection, usually not all the time, but on our lives' hardest moments, we might not get the restoration we hoped for, but we do get to love each other deeply through those times. And often it's a miracle that brings us to the presence and the gratitude that makes God known. Charlotte and I were chatting this week about miracles, and she sent me this quote: "We may not always get our miracle, but we always get God. And that is the miracle. And that is more than enough. Living in the tension of mystery and miracles ties a broken heart to God." So I encourage you to look for the miracle in all the places and ask for the miracle you want, but also to be open to the miracles that can happen in all the different ways, from laws to healing to even our broken hearts. I know hope, and I hope it brings us to a place of deep gratitude for the life we get to live on this tiny blue dot of a planet. Carl Sagan wouldn't use the word miracle because he's a scientist. But his picture and poem that he received a picture of Voyager 2, and he wrote this poem that is so sacred, in my opinion, and it brings us to the power of what the miraculous can do. Thank you, Matt, for reminding me of this poem. I will end with this poem called Tiny Blue Dot. We succeeded in taking the picture from deep space. And if you look at it, you see a dot. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever lived out their lives. The aggregate of all of our joy and sufferings, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilizations, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every hopeful child, every mother and father, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species live there on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors so that in glory and in triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of the dot on a scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner of the dot. How frequent and misguided, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatred, how our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all its vastness, there is no hint that help will come from anywhere to save us from ourselves. It is up to us. It has been said that astronomy is humbling, and I might add, a character-building experience. To my mind, there is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly and compassionately with one another, to preserve and cherish that pale blue dot, the only home we'll ever know. Amen.